In this session, I'd like to give you some ideas and possibilities about how to get teams or small groups of people to do possibility thinking and be creative. So in order to do that, I think it's essential to point out and make obvious that that team or group of people will either need a clearly defined problem or, more helpfully, a clearly defined goal. So your first step as a coach should be to gain absolute clarity about what they're working on. And that's more likely to be a SMART goal for a group of people. But it could be that you're working with an umbrella goal and under it are some SMART goals. So get the clarity first. Then let's go through some things that are already covered in other videos, and you can get the specific techniques from there, but I just want to do a recap for you. So if that group of people, let's suppose there's 5 or 6 people, have a clear goal, you could get them to use a bubble diagram. A standard bubble diagram, write the goal across the top and write down as many possibilities as they can. Give them maybe 5-10 minutes to do that. You could then put them in pairs to discuss that and get more ideas, or to evaluate themselves first, perhaps highlight or circle their best ideas. And then rather than just shout them out, get them to work in 2s or 3s to get their best ideas out together, and then get each group to present back. So that would be one way of doing it. Another way of doing it using bubble diagrams is to get the key issues that this group faces and to write them in the middle of the bubbles, designing the questions for them. Similar process, but this time you're going to get answers related to key issue questions. Another technique is to take those key issues, and if there's a group of 6, I wouldn't use any more than 6 questions. Get some clipboards, get a piece of paper on each clipboard and write a high quality question that is possibility based relating to an issue on each different clipboard. So you've got 6 different questions on a clipboard, and you then get the person to write for 2 minutes on their own, pass it round to the left, take the next one, write 2 minutes, pass it round. Okay? So doing that will mean that you don't get the duplication, because people will naturally read down what the people have put before them, then they add their answers onto the bottom. And I sometimes call this the rotating clipboard technique. After you've done that 6 times, that will take you about 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, because people are doing this in silence, that can be quite exhausting, just writing answers down to 6 questions. You then might give each person a clipboard and ask them to highlight or prioritise the ones that they think are the most important from that list. And typically you will get kind of somewhere between 20 and maybe 60 possibilities depending on the question and the depth of the subject. And they prioritise, and what I would then do is get another person in the group to also prioritise, perhaps use a different colour pen or a pencil or a highlighter. And so you can start to see if any double priorities emerge. Okay? And then you can start to build an action plan and contribute, the best ideas from those into the group. That would be another way of doing it. I think another way of getting ideas out from people would be using Post-it notes. If you've got access to Post-it notes, you could get people to write down one idea on a time, just pass it over, and then you can cluster them and shape them and group them together on a table or a wall. Why these ideas are particularly good is that the quieter people or the more introverted people that perhaps wouldn't shout out their ideas in a more traditional brainstorm around a flip chart, these people can actually think and write just as fast as the more outgoing or extroverted people, and it just gives them a better opportunity to contribute. The final thing that I think you could do is use creative questions. Now there's a separate video on this subject about creative high quality questions, but you could take 2 or 3 of those examples, and the ones that I would perhaps use are a what if scenario, where you ask people to suspend their current beliefs for 5 minutes and go, well, what if we could find a way of doing that? Get the ground rules sorted for that 5 minutes about they're just ideas and possibilities, and sort out a way of capturing them. It might be that you as the coach capture this time, or one of the group capture them. The other idea that's good for groups is to do the reverse logic or flip side exercise, where you design 2 or 3 high quality questions that are the opposite. So it might be that you're looking to raise money for something, you're helping a charity or a group raise money. Instead of the normal question of how possibly could we raise X amount of money, you would ask the question deliberately to the group, how could we possibly ensure that we raise no money at all? Right? And you go for the world's worst fundraising committee. Right? It's a lot of fun to do just for 3 or 4 minutes, and you capture down what people say, and then you present that back to them and you flip it the other way. So you go, well, actually, let's suppose that what would the world's worst fundraising committee do? Well, they wouldn't tell anybody that they were raising funds. So what's the opposite of that is you would tell the whole world that you were raising funds. And that then provides you a spin-off question as a coach to go, well, how possibly could we tell the whole world? What media might we possibly use? And you sometimes get ideas and questions come out of that, spinning off, that you wouldn't normally get through asking traditional high quality questions. So there's just a few ideas about how to use possibility thinking in groups. A couple of things to bear in mind is, one is you need to think about the method that you're going to use for the time available with that group of people. You then need to think 2 steps ahead. And the 2 steps ahead are imagining that you've got all of those possibilities. How are you going to prioritise them, and who is going to prioritise them? Do they need collating if they're on Post-it notes or bubble diagrams? That's one of the advantages of using the rotating clipboards. They're all collated under the question. And then the next thing to think about is, what is the time period that is needed to evaluate some of these ideas before you start building the action plan? So just thinking a couple of steps ahead and letting the people know the method and the process that you're using would be really helpful there. And my tip for you is, if you're a community coach and you're not so confident about using these, buddy up with somebody that's maybe had a little bit of experience of doing it, or have a practice in one of your thinking action group meetings about using these methods, right? See it done, work on a real example, and then start to use it yourself when you're coaching groups.